Okay. Welcome everyone. I'm Sarita Vishwakarma, the marketing lead for healthcare and life sciences at SAS India. I'm thrilled to have you join us for what promises to be an enlightening journey to the world of pharma supply chains. Today, we will explore how enterprises can harness the power of SaaS to drive and revenue growth and optimize inventory across their supply chain processes and operations. Throughout this session, our fantastic speakers, Ajay and Vinay, will discuss real world examples and best practices, highlighting how SaaS can elevate your operational strategy and lead to impactful results. So, whether you are looking to refine your planning processes or maximize your revenue potential, you are in the right place. But before we jump into this exciting conversation with our speakers, let's give a warm welcome to our first speaker, Ajay Tomar. He leads the life sciences practice within the customer advisory group at SAS India and brings over 25 years of consulting experience in the pharma, clinical research, manufacturing, supply chain, and commercial domains. Today, we are also happy to have with us Vinay Chaturvedi, the founder and CEO of M12 Planner Inc. With over 15 years of experience, he specializes in retail and supply chain product management and the development of cutting edge solutions to address complex industry challenges. Now, before I invite Ajay Tomar to take a lead into this conversation, there are a few technical things which I would like you all to take care of. I encourage all our attendees to participate in the discussion by submitting their questions and comments into the Q&A chat box. Our speakers will address all these questions at the end of this webinar. So please, during the entire course of the webinar, please feel free to put on your questions in the comment box. As a technical I highlight, I would like to mention at the end on your screen, on the left bottom of the screen, you can see a small button which when you click, you will be able to see today's agenda, ask a question, and also submit your feedbacks. Now, without further ado, I will welcome on stage Ajay Tomar.
Thank you so much, Sarita, and a warm welcome to everyone who has joined the webinar today. Thanks for joining. Uh, and yeah, we have Vinay also. Vinay, good morning.
Hello, everybody. Good morning.
So I think we can get started. So uh, and Vinay, what better way to start than to basically understand, right? Uh, Related to the topic of the webinar itself, right? What we mean by inventory related revenue risk for an enterprise and how it is related to top and bottom line.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting question right up front. We normally talk of risks like financial risk, but supply chain planning contain it has a lot of risks. Planners plan their demand about 12 to 16 weeks ahead, which we call M3, M4 plans, which is your sales and S&OP horizon. And based on these projections and plans, the upstream they manage all the supplies, right? And everything would work very well if everything goes by the plan, but there are volatility in demand, and because there are near-term changes, which then at the end of fourth month you will get to know that hey, we have our accuracies were not that good, or something else happened. This customer ordered more, etc. But good planning systems always gear up for these kind of inaccuracies and the variation and volatilities. What hurts the most is a systemic bias in the numbers, right? Sometimes there's some products that are constantly over forecasting, right? You do what they just don't get that attainment, if you would, right? So if you are over forecasting, you're planning for more, you have inventory risk. And on the other hand, if you have over attainment or overachievement, right, then you are straining your system. You have a revenue risk because you're keeping the money on the table. And month to month, believe me, month to month, you won't even figure out a 2% high, a 4% high. But when it becomes systemic, then it starts really hurting your top and bottom line. And that's what I mean by harnessing revenue and inventory risks. That keep your biases under control, and you will be taking care of your revenue and inventory risks.
Good. Yeah, I think we were able to basically layer down on the topic why we chose this topic, right? Now, so moving forward, right? And we have had several discussions with several enterprise customers in India, outside India, right? And these are the customer basically who manufacture API formulation, CPG, right? And there's some common challenges that we keep hearing, right? Too much of an inventory locked across raw materials, finished products, spare parts, uh, across manufacturing plants and warehouses and distribution centers, right? Now, we understand that manufacturers basically operate under two business model, right? The make to order and make to stock. Now, in both the scenarios, when you have a locked working capital, right, across your different stages of product and across different warehouses and distribution centers, what happens is that the enterprise is not able to, leverage that capital for some of the other priority spends, right? Now, that is a challenge, that is a persistent challenge we've been hearing from our customers. Now, Vinay, would like to hear from you on what are the contributing factors that lead to these challenging situations for the enterprise customers.
So, Ajay, one thing which differentiates pharma supply chain with other supply chains that I've worked with is there is this balance of what I can call made to order and made to stock. Right? You go to food and beverage companies; they are primarily made to stock. Right? You go to tier one automotives; they're generally made to order project companies. But pharma planners have to kind of juggle these two priorities. Now, look at made to order. Right? You don't know when the order is coming, but you have some probability that you may or may not get an order. Right? And you assign probabilities with it. What's the likelihood of getting this order, etc. Because you would want to procure your raw material very close to when you are actually producing. Like there's no point keeping heavy stocks. I mean, there could be some good use cases where you would do that, right? You don't want to block your capital for an order that never came, right? On the other hand, made to stock is typically you would relate it with kind of runner items, and it relies on marketing and sales data and your own shipments data, the customer projections, etc. In both the cases, the need is to plan accurately at the lowermost level, right? And the reason for this is, again, I'm going to differentiate this between food and beverage and any other industry, because food and beverage, you actually demand planners plan in tons, right? How much of dog food, how much of cat food, how many tons of this, because there is a delayed differentiation happening. In pharma, there is something unique, right? And people from pharma industry, they would just know this, right? There is a difference when it comes to APIs and sometimes even to excipients. There's a big challenge of the gradation, right? That's number one reason, right? And in addition, APIs can also behave like commodities, right? The prices fluctuate so much, right? So let me give you an example. And I was talking to someone, and like they were talking that, well, generic telmisartan, and which is kind of a blood pressure medication, right? It has 4 grades, and most of the medicines are. But I'm just giving example of telmisartan. US FDA, you have EMA, you have IP, WHO. These are 4 normal grades, and there could be more. The difference between IP and when he told me the difference between IP and the US FDA is kind of 100% difference, like just the double. That kind of pauses something, you're buying for $100 and for 200, and then WHO and EMA are in between. So you have to really plan your stocks if you are planning for export markets. which one, or Indian market, right? How much of which SKU you would be likely to be producing, right? One of the manufacturers, they was talking that, well, for this particular country, we buy it from a particular vendor, right? And if it's excess, then we can take care of domestic stock because, well, that's how it is. But at all cost. And then again, there is a week-to-week price difference. So, in short, these are the things that are blocking your capital. And there are other reasons as well, and we can dwell in those reasons later on. Yeah.
Sure. No, I think good. I think so. There are a lot of during the process itself. There gets a lot of unknowns and variables which impact the entire process, right? Adversely, right?
Yeah.
If not managed properly. Okay, I think at this juncture, Vinay, probably it is time for us to also put up a question to the audience, right? Let's do an audience poll. Poll number 1. And seek some of the input from the audience as to what I'm not sure if the question is done. Yeah, it is done. So now request to the audience that you would see this question, which is which solution you use for demand forecasting process. There are 4 options. Please pick the one which is relevant in your domain. The options are manual using Excel, or you are using SAP IBP, or the third one is demand planning solutions like Kinaxis, Blue Yonder, and others, or you do it using open source technologies. So take few seconds and please respond as per your business process. I think we have some. We will wait for a few seconds to capture all the responses before we move forward. Yeah. So we have the audience poll results now, and most of the enterprises today, to the tune of 45%, are managing the demand forecasting process using SAP IBP. And there are about 36% who are using the manual Excel way to manage the demand forecasting process. There is none which is using any demand planning solutions like Kinaxis or Blue Yonder. And 18% of them basically are using the open source technology. So that is a lay of land, Vinay.
And I'm not surprised, right?
Yeah.
This is generally how the things are, right? Everything has their advantages and disadvantages, right? But that's a wonderful insight. Yeah.
Sure. So thank you so much, audience, for participating here. So we'll move forward. So Vinay, we understood that there are so many unknowns, so many variables which are there in the entire process, right? And so how easy or difficult it is to solve this problem, which is poor forecast accuracy and fragmented fulfillment processes, which are including manual steps and etc. So how easy or difficult to solve this problem is, Vinay?
Look, I wish I could say that there is a magic wand, right? I wish I could say that there is a magic wand. We don't have a magic wand. And there was a time when people came, beating their drums and said, "Oh, we have the best forecast. We can solve all your problems." Right? And then there was kind of a disenchantment. People went back to the manual ways. What we are seeing now, the best in class organizations or enterprises, they are keeping a very healthy mix of analytics and user judgment, right? So this is where I think the dust is settling, or what it is now. Why was this disenchantment, or why people stopped trusting forecast, or why we think that forecasting is really a problem, is that any demand pattern has natural inherent uncertainty in it. There is something which is you cannot explain that, right? Those are natural variations, right? And these natural variations are, you can treat them as noise, right? One day 26, suddenly a customer ordered twice or thrice, and then there is a lull after that storm, and it has totally disturbed your supply chain, right? So let me give you an example. Let's say a pharmacy retailer, a big retailer, is consolidating vendor base, and you as a manufacturer have a very good position to consolidate your position, right? There's a high likelihood that you may get the spoils of that consolidation. Your order size is going to increase. But there are 3 degrees of uncertainty here. The first one is if you're going to get it. Now assume that you say, yeah, we have a very good chance. When? When is this order coming? Next month, 2 months later, right? And I fully empathize with the people in sales or account management. They have no clue or very little clue, right? And if yes, it's coming in 2 months, what's the quantity? So you can see there are 3 uncertainties inbuilt in it, right? Now we can say that this happens both in made to order or made to stock. What about runner products? Well, this is what happens to runner products. Uh, Retailers or your customers, they give you orders. They give you order forecasts. They have a projection that that's how they are going to be ordering, and then you start look at what is the actually adherence to that projection or that forecast. Sometimes 40%, sometimes 70%, right? Their forecast is just a level by which you measure the lack of or adherence or lack of it. So these are some of the situations where traditional tools get severely challenged, and that's why that caused, and it's even there today. It's not that the situation has changed. Now, any good fulfillment system that you would work on, and I've worked on a couple of them at least, what we have found that these are capable of factoring some of these uncertainties. So what they do is that they try and bring the forecast um, accuracy as close to what is reasonably possible. There are 3 levels where they are adding the value. So first level is that if you would just use a naive forecast, right? Nothing. You're not doing anything with the forecast. Your last, you're taking 3 or 4 months moving average, and that you say that that's my naive number. You use statistical and then deep learning models, or which we can talk about, to improve the forecast. That's the first value add that's happening. The second value add, and which is the most important value add that's happening, is where planners enrich these numbers. You see, planners have guts. Gut means they have a gut feel. They know what systems generally don't know, right? So if they manage by exception and pinpoint some skews, they can improve that number, they can improve that forecast. So that's the second level of value addition. And the third level of value addition is provided not by forecasting systems per se, but by a good fulfillment system. So what they do proactively is that they will factor these uncertainties, and then they will try and balance, the risk of losing money or the revenue risk with the risk of obsolescence, expiration cost, which is very big cost and concern in pharma at least, and the cost of capital. So what they do is they constantly keep on, balancing SKU by SKU what's best for them. That's something which we have seen companies are doing to mitigate some of the things that I talked about. Now, if you come to domestic market, which is, while what you are showing on the screen, look at the opportunities or avenues where this noise can get amplified. Right? Coming right there's a primary sales channel, there is a secondary sales channel, then you have a tertiary sales, and then some of us bypass totally, and then you have direct to consumer channels that has started, right? So there's so many things happening that sometimes this noise is getting amplified. An order is placed, it reaches to the chemist, and then you see there is no uptake for that. Why? Because in that local particular area, some medical practitioner is now prescribing some other variant or other brand of the drug, right? And this information takes a lot of time to reach back. So those are the things which are, I think, the challenges. And but we are getting there. So best in class enterprises are, as I said, let me repeat that once again, it's so important here that they are using analytics, and then they're using human judgment when it's needed, where it's needed. And this collaborative planning, which was once we considered that, okay, collaborative planning no longer works because your forecast is not good. Now we are realizing that this collaborative planning, in fact, is helping the forecast to learn better and give better results. I hope this is clear.
Yeah. No, I think thanks for basically bringing out all the angles around this process of how difficult this problem is to solve. Uh, Moving on now, so basically we are talking about SNOP. Broadly, we are talking about SNOP, which has improving the planning efficiency, increasing the accuracy of the forecast, effectively matching the demand and supply pattern,
Yeah.
and the word that you use, a collaborative platform for consensus building, right? Now let's understand. So Vinay, let us understand, how does SaaS intelligent planning analytics solution enable these business objectives?
Right. So let me answer your question like two different ways. One blanket solution, and I know SaaS intelligent planning solution so well, as you know, that
Yeah.
back in the days I was one of the members who helped envision these applications, right? And we kind of covered the whole broad spectrum there, that starting from demand, and then to take it to supply, and then bring it all together in terms of an SNOP platform, right? So we build all of that, we visualization. But how we kind of focused, right, even at that time, and what more so I'm seeing now with SaaS is that it's singular focus on efficiencies, right? Your polling question talked about 30+% people using Excel. That day in a life of an Excel user, you take the data out of CRM, you take the data out of SAP, if you're using SAP or any other software, right? You bring it, you assemble it, you do your planning, you happily enter into a meeting room and find that someone had just changed the sales data, so now your plan no longer is valid, right? And people talking, which Excels don't talk amongst each other, by the way. People do. So that's what SaaS did, was that how can they provide better results with low efforts. And when I say low efforts, I mean in terms of people, processes, technology, and services. So what is the starting point? In any good forecasting process, the starting point is how good your data is, right? And SaaS's demand orchestration platform is heavily dependent on its data orchestration, right? How good the data you are getting inside, right? How automated that process is. Does it need human judgment? Or how would you do master data management? How to find out the data quality aspect of it? Two products, similar naming, enjoying different SKU numbers for no reasons, right? So all of that process, that good data process, is part of the data orchestration that SaaS provides, right? And again, the focus is on efficiencies, right? Once you have done with that, once you've got the data from different ERPs and CRMs, etc., next question is to focus on giving a reliable forecast, repeatable forecast, numbers that people could trust. So how did they do was, of course, SaaS has been building forecast technology even before I was born. I could say that, right? they started somewhere around that time, and they have now progressed into the advanced deep learning models. So we have seen a whole generation of tools that have been perfected over thousands and thousands of customers and use cases. Plus, if you see the newer ways of solving problem, I always believe that problems of you cannot solve today's problem and tomorrow's problem by yesterday's tools. For newer problems, you need newer tools, and that's what SAS did, right? When demand sensing was the fad of the day, SAS actually came out with algorithms that could do demand sensing in conjunction with forecasting. So if you see that, they've got a very rich model repository, and then an exception based forecast review process. Now I've been talking a lot about demand. Let's just shift gears for a second and go to supply side of it. So you know what your demand is. How would your plant know what to produce? Because your warehouses have some stock. There's something in transit. There are lead times involved. There is an uncertainty of demand involved, right? So SAS has these algorithms that would take your shipment or order forecast and then convert that. They will roll it up to the right manufacturing location. There is a term that we use, demand pull management. That's for that they have algorithms. And of course, then you have, scenario planning, forecast, value add, which I was talking about the value addition just now, the 3-stage value addition. They've actually built some logic or algorithm to check which stage in the process how much value is getting added, the human value and the analytical value and the optimization value. So if you see all of this, starting from data to forecasting to optimization to scenarios, and of course, how can I forget the collaborative planning, that the workbench that they have, right? Which by the way, they mix in a lot of, I saw a lot of SAP users here. One thing which I find these two organizations in common, that both of them, they never look down upon Excel. So they have both Excel as well as non-Excel interfaces, right, for excellent users. So I think that those are some of the things which SAS has done, focusing on efficiencies, automation wherever required, not everywhere, wherever required, scenario planning and what ifing, etc.
No, very good. So I think with that, it's time that we again go back to the audience and with our polling question number 2. So I think that should be coming up on the screen to the audience. So may I request the audience to basically choose the right option. So the question is, in your current forecasting process, how much do you have to override the forecast? The option A is generally we trust the statistical forecast which is generated by the system. The option number B is, in a lot of cases, we have to review the statistical forecast and make changes. And option C is, we only use statistical forecast as a guidance, but we manually have to forecast our SKUs. So audience, please pick the right option as relevant to your department, and then if you are able to submit, appreciate it. So let's just give few seconds to the audience while they are reviewing the options. Yeah, yes, we have the result out, Vinay, and the second option is chosen by most of the attendees, which says, in a lot of cases, we have to review the statistical forecast and make changes. So the number is 35%. And we have, the third option, which is the highest basically. It says we only use statistical forecast as guidance, but we manually have to forecast our SKUs, which is 41%. Okay, and the third option, the third percentage is, generally we trust the statistical forecast, which is about 24%. So that's how the responses are.
And Ajay, when we were setting up these questions, I particularly like this question because this is one question where uh, there is no absolutely no right or wrong.
Right.
It's so business specific. It's so number one, it's business specific. Number two is how much people can go in depth in using statistical techniques. You can use simple techniques, you can use very deep techniques, and I cannot guarantee that either of those techniques will give any different results depending upon how good the data is. So which is the encouraging part is, which is kind of also gelling it with what I have been talking about, is the human judgment
Yes.
is absolutely important. And again, for the audience, I'm going to repeat: human judgment, not because forecast is not good. Human judgment because today technology has changed. The processes can learn from these human judgments and maybe help reduce some of the load that people are experiencing.
Very good. So thank you so much, our audience, for participating. So moving on, Vinay. Now, so so a lot of good thing that we discussed, right? So in an enterprise, a typical IT model, right, is they do material planning in ERP, as we saw from the poll also,
Mhm.
right? For SNOP, the enterprises are either using IBP or manual way or some third-party software or open source, right?
Mhm.
Or Excel
Mhm.
sheets, right?
Mhm.
Now, how would the SaaS intelligent planning solution add value and differentiation to the SNOP business process in case customer has invested in a third party software already?
Yeah, that's a good question. And look, we always, in my earlier narration, I talked about how SaaS works end to end from data to visualization, right? And having analytics, optimization, human intervention, and presentation layer, etc. But that doesn't preclude SaaS from being modular. It's a very, very modular application. So what we have seen in majority of cases is either that's the optimization side or the forecasting side. People use this as plugins or as an augmentation play. And I've seen with some of the customers where JDA was the downstream replenishment tool. They were using SaaS for forecasting and reviewing the forecast. And in fact, there was another one they were using O9 as their primary SNOP platform with you know with 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 SaaS as forecasting. And during SAP APO days, this was the time when when I was with SaaS, right? There was actually an adapter to APO, right? And then when when SAP came to, they built their demand signal repository DSR to put the visualization uh, data framework. So I was talking about how good SaaS is in the data processes. We actually worked with SAP on a project, the R&D teams from both the centers. So the data platform was provided by SAP, right? Their DSR on HANA. I don't know what happened to that project, anyways, but we spent months on using that platform to visualize the use cases. So, long story short, SaaS can fit in at any stage of this process that we are showing here.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. So okay, so we actually spoke about the in the context of third party solution that the enterprise would have invested already. How does SaaS analytics comes in? Uh, what about the open source technologies, Vinay? We saw from the audience poll also, some of the enterprises are building a solution using the open source technology, right? How does it basically pan around for the enterprise following that route, Vinay?
So, look, I am personally, I'm a big fan of open source technology, right? And dabbled a lot in open source technologies. They're free, but I would say they're free, but they are very costly and expensive. Now, this may sound contradictory that, hey, if they are free, you can just
Yeah.
download them. Why they are so expensive? Well, it is because for smaller scale, if you're running experiments on small data, I mean, I run a lot of models on my laptop as well. Um, they're very extremely effective, right? But when you're using them for enterprise class use, these open source technology must be augmented by for either orchestration, operationalization, and more importantly, governance. Those three come. So now it takes us back to a situation, yeah, where we required paid platforms like Snowflake or Databricks for orchestrating open source Apache Spark, for example. Right? Spark is free, but if you do operationalize it and program in it, you have to really go back to a platform. Another practical issue is cost of operations. Most of, I wouldn't say most, because C is an open source technology. It's very efficient, but like Python, it's inherently inefficient technology, right? And there are a lot of ways that people have now improved the performance of Python, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done for that. But it requires massive parallelization, and somewhere it kind of affects your cloud costs if everyone is moving towards cloud cost. But with all that costly and operationalization, these are extremely popular with large citizen scientist ecosystem, if you will. Right? They are very, very popular. I use Python all the time, right? And you know what? SAS has a Python extension. So if you don't know SAS scripting, that's fine, right? A lot of people would be using, stats model with Python or any other, scikit-learn, for example. You don't know how internally scikit-learn is being programmed, just like SAS. All you need to know is how to call a particular procedure within scikit-learn, or that same thing happens with SAS. Right? You know how to run Python, execute Python script in a Jupyter notebook, or maybe in a file. Absolutely, you can do it. Just call one of the SAS procedures, because SAS procedures are they run in a very, very controlled environment, operationalized. They take care of all the performance, etc., etc., etc. And so this is now we are living in a world where companies like SAS, they're investing heavily for the benefit of citizen data scientists. Right? I believe what you are showing here on the screen is example of a point and click machine learning interface of SAS, where one of the nodes is a custom model built in, maybe I don't know what it's built in. It's built in R or something.
Yeah.
Some other language. Yeah. So now you get best of both the worlds, right? You can write the script in the language that you know, and you can operationalize in a system which is efficient, full governance, and control. Right? So it's a win-win.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we understand, right? So the uh, the way you basically have mentioned about contradiction, right? Free and not free. I think
Yep.
at least there should be a clear understanding on what we mean with that. So so fair enough, Vinay. Now, as you mentioned about the latest technologies, right? So the problems of today and tomorrow should not be solved with the technologies of yesterday, right? That's what
Mhm.
you mentioned.
Yeah.
So if I were to look at, right, with more and more advent experimentation and productionalization of AI ML use cases, right? AI ML is now so much closer to all the business process. Now, when it comes to SNOP, how does it look? Using the power of AI and ML inside the SaaS intelligent planning solution.
Right. So let's first talk of AI and ML's role in SNOP, and then we can talk about what SaaS is doing. So
Mhm.
AI and ML has already become mainstream in SNOP, right? 3 or 4 or 5 years back, I would have said that yeah, AI and ML are upcoming technologies, but they have already gone through their, you know, that 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 hype cycle where everything could be done with AI, and then now people are realizing what it can do. So what's happening now is in today's landscape, the question is no longer that, oh, are you leveraging AI and ML? The question is, how well are you leveraging AI and ML in your SNOP processes, right? And then uh, since past 2 years, we all have been hearing this buzz around Gen AI, which was a
Yeah.
buzz, by the way. It's reality now. It's reality now. So it's also going to be impacting SNOP in a way that we haven't thought earlier. Now, when it comes to SaaS, uh, SaaS has regression and classification procedures for, I don't know, many years, since many years. And I believe about 15 years back, right, during my infancy at SaaS, uh, we worked along with the R&D teams to create a new product forecasting algorithm that used uh, trees, which are, which we also known as random forest, and those kind of procedures. We use regression, which and clustering, which is part of machine learning arsenal today. And I think this was one of the first implementation of neural networks in C that SAS had done. So there was a neural thing, right, 15 years back. So we were not just calling it AI and ML that time, but it was an
Yeah.
it was an ensemble model that was used to have new product forecasting. So yes, SAS has some experience, I would say, right? Now things have moved a great, and I believe SAS has also moved accordingly. What SAS is doing in AML is focusing obviously on accuracies, because with these models like LSTMs, etc., memory models, and neural networks, they can foster a lot of cross learning. So what do you need for forecasting, right? Typically we say that, oh, you should have history, you should have your regressors, and then you will get a good forecast. What if you don't have history? What your history is short? So you have to learn from something else, somewhere else, right? So this cross learning is very well fostered by these newer methods, and SAS has those methods. One size would never fit all. So if I cannot sit here and say, oh, we can forecast everything 100% with AI and ML, I don't think that's the right approach. It's not a right approach, because in some cases you're just unforecastable. Things are just, you just cannot forecast them, right? Either you don't have enough data, or whatever you have is just noise. So if you forecast noise, you will get a noise. You cannot trust noise. And that's why you see, um, from planners' perspective, they have to then step in and say, keep this aside. I'm going to give my numbers. Like 45% people said that we are using it as a guidance. Why? Because you try and forecast noise, you will get noise. But at the same time, um, some of these use cases actually require forecasting, right? And when I say forecasting, which means they have enough history. These are runners running for 3, 4, 5 years, enough history, enough causals. You still don't need AI and ML there. Time series models are good enough to give you results. But then you have other products which are complex, complicated. This is where AI and ML literally help. So so that's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it, we were talking about efficiencies, right? AI and ML can foster automation. And this is how it does. Let's say you have a forecast process that ran, you have like 500 finished goods that you produce, formulations that you sell, and you are selling it to, I don't know, hundreds of customers. So you have got rich set of data available with you. Which one of this are you going to review the forecast? Everything, or you're going to forecast, take it up to a formulation level and then allow things to fall through the crack? This is where AI and ML can step in and say, okay, you focus on the big picture, while we take care of these smaller things. We will do some kind of a sense check on the forecast, and then we're going to come up with, if there are some anomaly detection, we will do it for you, and we will present a summary for you. Right? We will also tell you which forecast you shouldn't be touching because of your inherent bias, and which forecast you should be touching in plus and minus directions. So to make the it was a very, very long-winded answer because it's very close to me. AI and ML can do wonders in SNOP. They just can do wonders.
All right. so yeah, I think the so it is not that one size fits all, right? So the SaaS analytic platform basically provide the ability to tweak your model and use the latest and greatest, or some of the basic statistical model across your hierarchy, across your SKUs, across your categories to get the work done. Fair enough, Vinay. Thanks. I think, again, we will basically now go back to the audience and seek input for polling question number 3. And if it can be made available to the audience. I hope the audience can see the question now. So the question is, which factors are currently included in your demand forecasting process? And what we have done, we basically have categorized some of the factors across micro and macro. So micro factors like seasonality, festival, flood, monsoon, holiday, could be anything. And the macro factors like outbreaks, economic activity, war zones, supply chain disruptions, and others. The 3 options that we are requesting audience to pick from are option A, which is just a handful of micro and or macro factors. B, wanted to include many but can't yet in the process. And option number C, which is successfully include many of these factors in our process. So these are the options, audience. If I may request you to pick the most relevant one for your enterprise. Yeah. So I think, Vinay, we have the responses. So the most responded option is successfully include many of these factors in our process. Okay, some of these macro and micro factors. The next one is just a handful of some of these factors, and the other option which is mostly responded is wanted to include many but can't yet, right? So we have about 55% who are saying that either they are able to incorporate handful, or they wanted to include many but cannot do that today.
Okay.
So we will, go ahead.
Yeah. So just a comment on that, and again, this is part of our data journey, right? It also would depend on which stage of automation or using stat forecast that people are. So again, there is nothing of that. Oh, that's bad if you're not using it.
Sure.
It's a matter of where in the journey you are, and believe me, it's not that difficult once we start looking for those variables. Absolutely.
Yeah. Fair enough. So moving on, I think So at the start of the conversation, I think we spoke about inventory related risk, and the contributing factor
Mhm.
is the demand forecast variability, right? Uh, so, what are some of the best practices that the industry use to get a better handle on the demand when it comes to the capturing the inputs from the ecosystem? Vinay?
Mhm. So we have been talking about human judgment and machine judgment, and then combining them together. And typically, when we do that, we always have this notion in our mind that we will provide a statistical forecast on the side, and then let humans do what they do the best. Let's flip it. There is one more way, and I think this is where we are seeing a lot of companies following that thing. That when you generate a forecast or a number, it's just not a number that you are generating. You're actually breaking it down. You're making that whole process explainable, which means that something that I've personally done in many cases during the modeling is, if price is relevant, if your merchandising activity is relevant, try and find out how much. You may not get a very accurate answer, but you will get an answer in the ballpark. For a price, it's of course it's elasticity, and everyone knows about that. But let's say how many reps are in the region, etc. These are causals. So instead of using and directly generating a number, try and find out what's the impact of these, and statistically let's find out the impact, which people have done. Now once you have done that, then the human judgment starts coming in. This is, that doesn't look right, it doesn't look right. So then the process is improved till you get a reasonably acceptable answer. Now why am I saying this? Because these are the kind of things that then system can use to provide you options. That, hey, if you are putting these x number of reps in this area, or if the disease outbreak happens in in second half of Feb instead of January end, that's how it's going to impact your demand. So once now you know about the impact of disease outbreak, and you have calculated statistically, and you have validated it with your own planner's gut and human judgment. Now you can use that for maybe building some scenarios. So then what system can do is it can give you multiple options, and then you can say, okay, I think this be between option A and B, right? Unlike our polling question where you have to pick one,
Yeah.
there you can say that there's something, it's more closer to option B, uh, but how it is going to be done. So this is where human judgment and analytics can come in. So explainable AI or explainable analytics, which is validated, those effects are validated by humans, and then scenarios are generated. Another practice which people are using is, I mentioned about cross learning, right? So you can understand, and especially in pharma industry, this is more relevant, right? What we have seen. I was doing a project for a very large retailer here in the US, right? And this, even I didn't know at that time, they had put certain very hyper competitive brands just next to each other. And there was a question, why would you do that? You have such a big shelf space. Why would you do that? And they said these two go like that, right? I have a cheaper brand in the next shelf. Nobody touches that. These two go when your disease, when flu outbreak starts and it starts getting worse, people trust these ones, right? So there is a cross opportunity of cross learning. Now, as we were modeling the forecast there, this was like a godsend, input to us, that these are highly correlated. So there is a cross learning. So these are, you may come and say that, okay, so how much did you actually improve? And I say, even if it is 0.1% or 0.2% improvement, when there is no way else you can do that, these kind of inputs are very, very helpful.
Yeah.
So just to wind this up, right? Right way of integrating human and machine judgment through explainable analytical results, and then using these techniques for, either you want to do hierarchical forecasting or you want to do cross learning using AI. Those are the ones that I see is working. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, we basically have I think we're just about to approach our time. But probably the last two questions or last two points that we can touch upon, Vinay. In the pharma domain, right, there is you mentioned about API, excipients, and all that, right? Now, there is a term which says common blend, right? So you have multiple SKUs which are manufactured from those common blend or common set of APIs or excipients, right? The batch size may vary, uh, and the blend ratio may vary, right? So, say for example, you have a common blend of 60 kilogram, which is manufactured 20 is to 80 ratio of SKU A and B, or some other ratio for a different SKUs, right? How is this kind of a scenario supported in the SaaS analytic platform, Vinay?
So this is a classic trade-off scenario, right? And again, as in any trade-off scenario, you have to kind of you will be balancing something against something, right? So what are the key inputs for it? Out of the SKUs that the SKU like AB or versus whatever ABCD you are producing, those set of SKUs, which has the most likelihood of demand? So you already produced, right? You have got something left now. What should you be producing? So what has the likelihood of selling? This is where the forecast accuracy and more than accuracy, the reliability of forecast starts coming into picture. That month on month, how what is the fidelity of forecast versus what really happens in the field, right? Because if you have that, your variability becomes low. If your variability becomes low, you are more certain about the number that this so which definitely goes as one of the inputs. Because what's the other side of it? You produce this, and if you are not certain about it, there's a high chance that you will end up with the stock of finished goods that you cannot sell. So the way SaaS solve this problem is that they do the trade-off analysis of different scenarios, and then it will assign a risk propensity with both the cases, that this is could be your gain or loss in scenario one and gain or loss in scenario. That makes sense?
Yeah. No, this is a good example that you have given. Yeah. Uh, so the next point is we have spent so much time on the demand side of it. Let's talk about something on the other side, which is the supply planning, right? Now, which is, everything to do with the material procurement, scheduling, operations, which are mostly driven by the ERP solution.
Mhm.
How can SaaS analytic platform enhance the supply planning process in this ecosystem, Vinay?
So I would say right out of the bat, this is an augmentation use case. Um, there are ERP and MRP systems. I mean, SAP is a very good ERP system, right? And then you have different other MRP systems that are placed, and I've dabbled with one or two, which very simplistically allow you to run your schedule and stuff like that. Right? You can do that. So SaaS can certainly add value to these systems, and there are some of the examples how. So SaaS has a very big optimization portfolio, optimization as well as simulation portfolio. right? And I'm telling to my request to audience that go to SAS's support site and just try and look at SAS optimization, and you will see what all use cases that solve. And one of the use cases that they solve is bill of material use case, multi-indentured, multi-tier bill of material. Right? They have a procedure that just simply explores the bill of material and from parent to child, and it'll give you the results. Right. The second thing is, which is where SAS can help, is helping in scheduling. Right. So we do not, like, SAS doesn't have a scheduling app that you would see in a typical environment. But behind the scene optimization algorithms that can take care of any number of constraints, the constraint programming algorithms and mixed integer linear programming and nonlinear programming, right? You name those program, optimization procedures in SAS has. They in fact also have built an optimization programming language that helps, and I cannot understand that language. One of the few things that I don't understand is that SAS is optimization language. But people who know, optimization, they can just read through and work on it. But they are very, very powerful tools. So if you're happy working with your systems in a hyper manual way, that's fine. But if you want to inject some optimization and simulation in it, you have got the whole arsenal of SAS available for use.
Okay. So I think we are there in terms of our time limit, Vinay. I think let me just come to the summary, and then we will basically go back to the audience for Q&A. So Vinay, thank you so much for spending the time. And if we were to summarize, our discussion today on the topic, right? What we understand is that with SAS Intelligent Planning Suite, an enterprise gains potential to be more productive planning process, right? Which can predict and plan demand with a greater accuracy, drive forecasting efficiencies, and with advanced analytics, including machine learning, scenario planning, predictive analytics, all that you mentioned, and add automation at the same time, managed by exception, right?
Absolutely.
So human in the loop, and reducing the errors and bias, right? That is the first benefit. The other one is boosting your financial performance, right? So we saw how the entire working capital, how it is linked to the top line and bottom line, right? And the fact that incorporating causal factors, ability to incorporate dynamic causal factor in the forecasting process, right?
Yeah.
That is fully supported. And also the optimize the assortment to increase your inventory productivity and profitability, right? Assortment, and we spoke about common blend being one. Like that, there would be many, and all those assortments can be optimized using the platform.
Absolutely.
And finally, creating a better experiences for the business users, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, leveraging analytics to determine effective assortment, new product launches, improve workflow, business planning, collaboration, consensus building, right? And basically, we are, the platform can connect to any data source, right? So we can literally pull data from wherever it is into the orchestration layer.
Yeah.
So these are some of the summary that I wanted to share, and then what are some of the business benefits which are realized, right? Increase in the forecasting accuracy to the range of 10 to 33%. Again, these are estimated. It really depends on the enterprise use case, where they are, and what can be achieved. At the same time, increase on-shelf availability by 20 to 30%. We know that some of the market there is a SLA on that, Vinay, right? So
Yeah, absolutely.
Availability of drugs should be there, must be there, in fact.
Yeah. And
decrease
in many cases, you are actually committing to a certain level of availability, right?
Yes.
Especially if you are coming to US market, you're actually committing to certain level of availability, which is then you have to pay a lot of penalties if you don't meet those levels of targets.
Correct.
Yeah,
And decrease your inventory cost by 15 to 30%, reduce your waste and shrink by 10 to 15%, and increase ultimately everything then impacts your top line and bottom line up to the tune
absolutely.
of 3 to 11%. So these are some of the potential benefit that the enterprise can realize. With this, we have come to the end of our webinar session today. We will now move on to Q&A.
Yeah. Thank you, Ajay, and thank you, Vinay, for the insightful discussion. And I'm sure the audience had a lot of takeaways from today's conversation. But just before I let you take up the questions, I'll request all the attendees to please fill in the feedback form while Ajay and Vinay are going through the questions which they need to answer. And in case you haven't put up your questions yet, still we have some few minutes to go. So please put in your questions so that Ajay and Vinay can answer those. So I will just let Ajay to pick up the first question, and go ahead. And Vinay, please
Yeah,
add to that.
yeah, thanks. So the first question, Vinay, is that we spoke about forecasting accuracy and all, right? Typically, how much of a forecasting accuracy an enterprise can gain by using SaaS analytic solution?
So that's a very interesting question. I would say, where is your benchmark today, right? It's always relative to something. So where are you in the journey? But what we have seen, and I think Ajay, you were showing those numbers. We have seen anywhere between straight down 5-10% to up to 33, 34, 35%, depending upon the use cases and the journey where the people are, right? Um, Today's technology is, as I was talking about, citizen scientists, right? Um, People are using open source and they are doing really some good work. But then we have seen that even when your processes are all set and you are actually producing good forecasts, we can just top it up by another few 4-5 percentages. So there's a range, and it all depends on where in the journey you are.
Sure. So moving on to the next question. So the next one is, as I read out, how to improve forecast accuracy from a strategic to operational plan year on year. Uh, During strategy, volume looks to be bigger and almost meet their available capacity. But while budgeting, it generally reduces by 30 to 40%. Please throw some light on this.
So excuse me, give me a second.
Sure.
Yeah. So what you have said that when you are doing the initial part, strategic planning, you normally see inflated numbers, and as you are actually then you get to budgeting, you see those numbers coming down. Uh, there could be many reasons for it, but two I will say, which I have seen mostly. One is when you're doing strategic plan, uh, you're planning resources, so you generally tend to forecast more on the side of error. What you don't want is at strategic plan level, you are in terms of your capacities, you don't have enough capacities to work through. That would be catastrophic, because these building capacity building takes time.
Yeah.
Contracts, getting into contracts from contract manufacturing takes time. So yes, strategic planning, you would see people typically inflating the numbers. Budgeting is something that you have to report to board. So you cannot, it's very difficult for people to getting over optimistic. I mean, if you're a private enterprise, that's great, that's okay. But if you're reporting to your stakeholder board and to in your annual reports, you try and say that your numbers are not going to meet your earlier guidance, and see how the market shifts. So what we have seen in financial forecasting, those are the two things. I hope I have answered this question.
Yeah, no, you did actually, and I think the follow probably could be that there will always be a variance if you do a top down and bottom up reconciliation, right? So strategic, I would say, is more top down, and your operational would be more bottom up, right? There would be some variances. I think the essence would be how to reduce these variances, right? Uh,
I would still say that
hmm.
even in top down strategic forecast, you have to be a little liberal to
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
uh, to make sure that the long range readiness is not impacted.
Correct.
You're talking about building warehouses, you're talking about putting in plants, right? Long term hiring requirements. So obviously, you need to be realistic, but it's
Yeah,
fair to on the side of over forecasting a little bit.
correct. Understood. So moving to the next question, so it says, how the SaaS will forecast the demand when same item have different code because of different pack sizes,
Excuse-
and this will happen frequently in pharma product.
yeah,
Uh,
and this happens. Believe me, this happens
uh,
almost everywhere, right? You have a 10 you have a strip with 10 tablets, a strip with 15, a box with 10 or 5. You have different pack sizes. Yeah, that's there. So as long as we are we can maintain differentiation uh, within the API group or API grade, if these pack sizes are mutually changeable, we don't have a problem with that. Because then what we would do is we would use equivalent weight, equivalent volume technology to get to a level, to a prepackaged level, right? So if you see the process, you are doing your mixing, then you granulation, and then you do blending. Some require coating, others not. Once you have done QA and you think that your tablet is ready to be packed, right? Then you send it for packaging. Now depends on at what level you are doing differentiation. If the same blend is used for maybe two different brands using exactly everything same, then you get your forecast to that level. Because at that point at, in time for preparing your supply chain, you really don't care what would be your final size going to be. Now you can say that, oh, but the packaging. What about packaging material? Right? That's also important. Yes, but in terms of the procurement lead times and as compared to APIs, it's a much lesser problem. So
mhm.
it's an important problem, but a little lesser problem. So again, to go back to your question, how would SaaS do that? This is how SaaS would do that. That if you are doing for your SNOP horizon, which is 13 weeks, beyond 13 weeks horizon, we will look at the point of differentiation in the chain where we can produce the right number. And it could be your forecast could be in kilos rather than the boxes.
Sure.
Because the boxes would be apples and oranges, one size different and another size different. If you are getting into demand sensing, which is an SNOE horizon now, where rubber is meeting the road, you have to produce it next month. How many really finally I should have, uh, the packaging sizes, or what
Hmm.
should be the sizing? Then you will inform your SNOE forecast, which will be now at the box level, from the upper level forecast that you had done. Because everything is the die has been cast, you have everything, you cannot produce anything more than that now. I hope I have answered your question. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think this is very good. The way you mentioned about horizon, right? Two different horizon,
Exactly.
uh,
Mhm.
and that is a differentiation basically, right?
Not only
Uh,
two different horizons, then the
hmm.
second is, especially in pharma, right? If your API grade is, if the blend is exactly the same,
Mm-hmm.
then you might want to pull it up the chain and say how much of kilogram of this blend I would be needing, right? That makes sense.
Yes.
That makes
Yep.
sense.
Okay, yeah. I think we have lot many other questions, Vinay, but we are already over the time, and we of course don't want to hold everyone, right? So maybe we will do a follow-up. Rest assured, audience, whatever questions remain unanswered, we will basically individually, reach out to you, to the concerned person, with our response and next steps. So with that, I think Vinay, we have come to the end of our session today. A warm thanks to you, Vinay, for joining this webinar and sharing all the insights, and a warm thanks to all the attendees. Thank you so much, people. You're joining from your daily work life. Appreciate your time and the participation in the webinar through the polling questions and all the questions that you've submitted. Thank you so much. Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Thanks, Vinay.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you.